Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. Every night, like clockwork, she'd lie down, pull the blanket up to her chin, and say it. No intimacy, no explanation, no emotion, just those two words, like a command. And I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I became a stranger in my own marriage. But that night was different. That night, I didn't just lie there and take it. That night, I stood up. And when I told her, calmly and clearly, "Our marriage ends here," she shot up like she'd heard a gun go off in the room. Eyes wide, breath caught in her throat. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just said it. And for the first time in a long time, she was the one frozen in place. Not me. See, most men would have kept trying, kept hoping, kept asking, "What's wrong?" I already did that. For months. At first, it was small things. Less touch, less laughter. Then came the polite excuses. Headaches, stress, deadlines. But after a while, she didn't bother with the excuses. She just laid down, said her line, and rolled over. And me? I became a shell of who I was. I convinced myself that maybe this was just what marriage looked like after a few years. I told myself to be patient, to be understanding. But the truth? The truth is, I stopped existing in her world a long time ago. And that night, when I finally said I was done, it wasn't about anger. It was about peace. Cold. Surgical. Final. She blinked at me, trying to process what she just heard. And then, for the first time in years, I saw her face change. Not in control. Not detached. But panicked. She stood up, hands shaking. "I love you. Don't leave me." Too late. Because that man, the one who waited, hoped, stayed up trying to fix what she never wanted to fix, he already left. What stood in front of her now was someone she didn't recognize. Someone she thought was safe, tame, predictable. She thought I'd stay no matter what. She was wrong. And here's the thing most people don't get. It's not the yelling or the fights that end a marriage. It's the silence. The cold, empty nights when one person keeps reaching out and the other keeps pulling away. I gave her every chance. But once a man sees the truth, once he feels what it's like to sleep next to a wall for months, something inside him dies. And what's born in its place is someone you should have never ignored. That night wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of the part she never thought she'd see. The part where I disappear without slamming the door. Where I don't burn the house down. I just walk out and never look back. The next morning, the house was too quiet. No clatter of her coffee mug. No passive-aggressive sighs from the hallway. Just silence. I got dressed without rushing. Ate my breakfast alone. And when I left the house, I didn't glance back. I didn't leave a note. Didn't check if she needed anything. And she noticed. Of course she did. That afternoon, she sent a message. Just 4 words. "Can we talk tonight?" I didn't reply. Not out of spite. But because that version of me, the one who jumped at every opportunity to fix things, was already gone. When I came home that evening, she was waiting. Hair done. Makeup on. A dress I hadn't seen in years. One she used to wear back when we still had a pulse. There were candles lit on the table. A bottle of wine half opened. Like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just ended the marriage the night before. I walked in, nodded once, took off my shoes, and started clearing the mail. She stepped in front of me, touched my arm. Her voice was low, soft. "I missed you today." I looked at her, really looked. Not with anger. Not with affection. Just clarity. Because what she was doing wasn't love. It was strategy. Control, wrapped in perfume and wine. I didn't flinch. Didn't move. I simply said, "I'm not doing this." And walked past her. Not fast. Not angry. Just done. She didn't follow right away. She stood there, lips parted, completely disarmed. Because she thought she still had time. She thought I'd melt the moment she got close again. But that version of me, the one who waited at the edge of the bed hoping she'd turn over and touch me, he died a slow death in the dark months ago. And now, she wasn't looking at the man she could manipulate. She was looking at someone she couldn't reach. The next morning, she tried again. Woke up early. Made pancakes. Set the table. I grabbed a coffee, said thanks, and walked out the door. No bite. No seat at the table. That was the moment it started sinking in. It wasn't just silence anymore. It was detachment. The one thing she never thought I'd learn. See, she had spent months pulling away from me, believing I'd never do the same. She thought men like me stay no matter how cold it gets. No matter how many nights end in rejection, she thought she'd always have time, until she ran out of it. And now? Now she wasn't trying to win me back. She was trying to slow the fall. But I wasn't falling anymore. I was rising. And she had no idea how far above her I already was. By the end of that week, something shifted. Not in me. I'd already shifted. In her. She started watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. Her eyes lingered longer. There was tension in her jaw that hadn't been there before. Not anger. Worry. She was beginning to sense it. The emptiness she'd once fed me with every rejection was now feeding itself. She came into the kitchen one morning, earlier than usual. Usually, she'd walk past me like I was air. But now she hovered. She asked if I needed anything. I said no. She stood there for another 10 seconds, waiting for something, anything, that would tell her I still cared. I didn't offer it. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I had nothing left to give. Later that night, she knocked on the door to the guest room. I'd started sleeping there 2 nights earlier. No fight. No announcement. Just moved my pillow. Took a blanket. Closed the door. She asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I told her I had plans. That was new. I used to clear my schedule just to be in the same room as her, even if all she gave me was silence. But now I was learning what it felt like to be free, quietly, completely. And she was feeling what it was like to be optional. The next morning, she texted me. A long message. Said she missed how things used to be. Said she felt like we were losing something. I read it. Didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because she wasn't reaching out to me. She was reaching out to the man I used to be. And he wasn't home anymore. At work, I started staying later. Not because I had to, but because being away from her felt better than pretending things were fine. I hit the gym afterward. Not for revenge. Not to attract anyone else. Just to feel strong again. To feel like something in my life was still under my control. And people noticed. Coworkers. Strangers. Even the barista who never remembered my name suddenly smiled a little wider. But none of that compared to the look on her face when I walked in one night at 9:30. She was sitting on the couch in her robe, TV on, wine glass untouched. Like she was waiting. But I didn't rush in. Didn't ask if she ate. Didn't tell her where I'd been. Just hung up my coat, nodded, and walked to the guest room. And I could feel it, her eyes burning into my back. Not with anger, but with confusion. Because for the first time, she was chasing someone who'd already stopped running. There's a silence that isn't just quiet. It has weight, like fog that settles on everything. You don't hear it. You feel it. That's what our house became. By week 2, she stopped pretending. Stopped performing. No more candlelit dinners. No more forced smiles or lingerie she hadn't worn in years. Instead, she hovered. At doors. In hallways. Waiting to be acknowledged. And when she wasn't, she folded in on herself. I could feel her watching me from the kitchen doorway as I laced my boots. She stood there like a ghost in her own home. But I didn't offer comfort. Not because I wanted her to hurt, but because I was done rescuing someone who threw the rope away months ago. At night, she stayed up later than usual. Lights on in the bedroom. I could hear the creak of the floorboards above my head, the restless pacing. Then, one night, I heard something else. A muffled sob. Pillow soft. Barely there. She was crying. Not the dramatic, manipulative kind. The kind you only make when you think no one's listening. I lay there in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't go up to ask what was wrong. Because I already knew. She was mourning the control she thought she'd always have. The safety net she assumed I'd always be. And now that I was gone, right there, but emotionally 10,000 miles away, the gravity of her decisions was finally starting to pull. At work, I was different. Sharper. More focused. My team noticed. My boss noticed. Even got pulled aside and told they were considering me for a lead project I'd wanted for over a year. That night, I got home later than usual. She was in the kitchen, sitting at the table, her laptop open but untouched. She looked up like she had something to say, but I just nodded, walked past, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, and left the room. She didn't follow, didn't speak, didn't try. Something in her posture had changed. Like she was finally realizing this wasn't a phase. This wasn't me throwing a tantrum. This was the beginning of a life she wouldn't be part of anymore. I started rerouting my paycheck. Small steps. Quiet steps. A separate account. New passwords. A new budget. Not to be secretive. To be free. Because if I was going to rebuild, it wouldn't be on the ruins of a marriage where I was treated like an accessory. It would be from scratch. And she She could keep the house full of memories, but not the man who made them. It didn't take long for her silence to turn into suspicion. Not love, not concern, control. That's what was unraveling. She'd lost the grip. And when people like her start losing control, they look for someone else to blame. It started subtly. She began asking casual questions about my schedule, where I was going, who I was seeing. Not directly. Not like a wife curious about her husband's day. More like a woman trying to solve a puzzle that suddenly stopped fitting together. She asked if I'd be home for dinner. I said probably not. She asked what time I'd be back. I told her I wasn't sure. The next morning, she lingered in the doorway while I buttoned my shirt. Tried to joke, tried to smile. Said I looked nice. Said she missed us. I didn't respond. Not coldly. Just like someone who'd already processed the grief and moved on. Because I had. She was still trying to swim back to shore. But I'd already built a boat. And I was learning how to sail. That night, I came home late again. She was waiting. Lights on. Hair done. Like she wanted to recreate the version of herself I used to crave. She asked me a question. One that told me exactly how deep her panic had sunk. Is there someone else? I looked at her. Not with guilt. Not with denial. Just silence. Because the truth was, there wasn't anyone else. Not in the way she meant. No affair. No secret number. No hidden texts. But yes, there was someone else. Me. The version of me I'd left behind to keep this marriage alive. The man I buried under years of emotional starvation. The man who used to wait by the door hoping to be chosen. He was back now. And he didn't need her. I didn't answer her question. I didn't know her that. She wasn't asking because she cared. She was asking because she was losing. She stood there for a while. Waiting. Fighting the urge to beg. But she didn't. Because even she knew. Begging only works when the other person is still emotionally invested. I went to bed. Alone. Again. But this time, I didn't stare at the ceiling wondering what I'd done wrong. I slept. Deep. Unafraid. Unburdened. Because what she didn't understand is that love doesn't leave in a single moment. It fades. It withers. And when it's gone, you don't scream. You don't fight. You just walk away. Already packed. Already done. There's a certain calm that comes when you finally decide you don't owe anyone explanations. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I couldn't sleep, but because I didn't want to waste another second living someone else's illusion. I made coffee. Not 2 cups. Just one. I sat at the table, logged into my accounts, and started untangling a life I no longer wanted to share. It wasn't about revenge. It was logistics. Strategy. A quiet separation. Financial first, emotional long done. I rerouted my salary to a new account. Canceled the credit card she never paid, but always used. Turned off autopay on the subscriptions she'd added for both of us. It took less than 20 minutes to start undoing years of silent sacrifice. When she came down, still in the same robe she always wore, she noticed the shift. Not right away, but the silence was louder now. Colder. Permanent. She asked if I had time to talk that evening. I said I had plans. The next day, the first alert hit. She texted, "Did something happen with the account? I can't access Hulu." I didn't answer. Not to be cruel. Just because silence was finally being heard louder than anything I could have said. She tried a softer approach. Left a note on the fridge. "Made pasta tonight. Hope you're hungry." I came home late. Ate out. Didn't touch the food. Didn't acknowledge the note. The next morning, she asked if everything was okay. I said, "Everything's fine." She paused. Waited for more. But that was all I gave. Because when someone spends months saying no, in every way that matters, eventually, your yes to yourself becomes the only thing that matters. I began listing items for storage. Not selling. Just removing. The bookshelf I built for her office. Gone. The wall prints she picked out but never hung. Packed. Every trace of my effort that went unnoticed, systematically removed. She noticed. Of course she did. One night, she came home and asked why her login no longer worked for the joint account. I looked at her. Calm. Measured. Said, "Because it's not joint anymore." She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue. But nothing came out. Not because she was scared. Because she finally understood. She didn't lose me. She gave me away. Piece by piece. Night after night. And now I was just finishing what she started. Desperation wears perfume when it has no more weapons left. That Friday, she tried something new. Not subtle. Not soft. Calculated. I came home to find the lights dimmed, soft music playing, candles lit across the living room. A dinner I used to love, steak, garlic mashed potatoes, wine breathing on the counter. She stood in the doorway wearing that black dress, the one she hadn't touched in years. Hair curled, lipstick perfect. It was like she'd turned the clock back 5 years. Except the time had run out. I didn't walk in like I used to. Didn't smile, didn't compliment her. I paused at the door, looked around, and walked out. I didn't say anything, didn't explain, just left. I drove to a quiet diner across town, ordered coffee, and sat in a booth alone. Not lonely, free, because I finally understood something most people miss. You don't rebuild a connection by setting the stage. You rebuild it through consistency, not theatrics. She was trying to use nostalgia as a leash, trying to recreate a version of herself I would chase again. But that version was gone. And so was the man who once would have dropped everything just to feel wanted. When I got home 2 hours later, the candles had burned out. The food was cold. She was sitting on the couch with her heels off and mascara streaked beneath her eyes. She didn't look up when I passed. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Because the moment she realized her seduction didn't land, she understood this wasn't about distance anymore. It was about disconnection. The next day, she cleaned the entire house. Polished. Organized. Tried to reset the environment. Like she could scrub the tension off the walls. I left a pair of shoes by the door that night. She moved them. Placed them perfectly to the side. She was searching for control in tiny details. Trying to reassert her presence in my world. But I'd already created space where she no longer fit. Later, she left the house for a few hours. No explanation. No clue where she went. When she came back, she looked different. Tired, smaller. She sat across from me in the kitchen while I read the news. Then she said, "I don't know who you are anymore." She meant it as a question, but I took it as a compliment. Because if she still recognized me, it would mean I hadn't changed. It would mean I was still the man who waited, begged, compromised. But that man was gone. She never got to bury him. Because he buried himself the night she rolled away and said, "No intimacy." The difference between a phase and a plan is preparation. And by now, I wasn't reacting. I was building. She still thought this was a moment, something I'd get over. She couldn't see the scaffolding going up behind the silence. That week, I rented a private mailbox. Something separate. Something with no shared key. I updated my contact information with my bank, my employer, even my gym. I ordered a new SIM card. A new number. Not because I wanted to disappear. Because I was making sure that if I did, there wouldn't be breadcrumbs for her to follow. This wasn't running. This was reclaiming. My name. My space. My future. The day the SIM card arrived, she intercepted the package. She wasn't supposed to. It was addressed to me directly. But she brought it in with the rest of the mail, her fingers tight around the envelope. She didn't ask what it was. Didn't say a word. But I saw the look. Recognition. That's when it finally hit her. This wasn't about me being distant. This was about me being done. She tried small things again. Making coffee in the morning. Setting out 2 mugs instead of 1. I drank mine in silence. Took the second mug and poured it out. Not to be petty, but because I didn't want to drink anything made by someone who only remembered I existed when I stopped orbiting around her. She started texting me more. Soft messages. Memories. Old pictures of trips we took before things died in the bedroom and then bled into the rest of the house. I didn't reply. That night, she asked if we could go out somewhere, just talk. I declined. Not rudely. Not bitterly. I just said I had other things planned. Because I did. Not a date. Not a fling. Just me. My time. My freedom. I started journaling again. Tracking the shifts. Not her behavior, mine. Because growth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a man sitting in his car for 20 minutes after work, listening to nothing, and feeling more peace than he's felt in years. I bought new sheets. New towels. Neutral colors. Nothing that matched what she picked. It's amazing how something as simple as a change in fabric can feel like liberation. She walked past the guest room and noticed the changes. The suitcase in the corner. The folded shirts that weren't hers. The scent of new detergent. And that's when I saw it. The fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing me. Fear that she already had. And the realization that I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was trying to leave well. That's what scared her most. Because if a man walks away in anger, he might come back. But when he walks away in peace, he never does. She thought she still had time. Even after everything, she still believed she had leverage. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was pride, but somewhere in her mind, I was still hers. Still the quiet, loyal man who'd eventually come around. But by the end of that month, I wasn't circling anymore. I was moving. Deliberately. The day I packed my suitcase, she was in the living room, scrolling her phone like she always did when she wanted to appear unbothered. I didn't slam drawers. Didn't make noise. Just packed with quiet precision. Shirts. Files. Chargers. Essentials. Nothing sentimental. Nothing we'd bought together. Only what belonged to me. She walked by the room once. Slowed. Watched me zip the case. Work trip? She asked. I nodded. Didn't give a location. Didn't say when I'd be back. Because that was the moment I understood. This wasn't a goodbye. It was a closure she wasn't invited to. When I left the house, I didn't turn off the lights. Didn't leave a note. Didn't give her something to hold on to. Just the sound of the door locking behind me. The hotel wasn't fancy. Wasn't far. But it felt like a different planet. A quiet room. A king-sized bed with no cold shoulder waiting beside me. No questions. No tension. Just silence. My silence. And that night, I slept like a man who finally stopped apologizing for wanting to be seen. The next morning, she called. Then texted. Then emailed. Her message was short. I think we should start over. Reset. Go to therapy. It was what I used to beg for. But now, it felt like a stranger offering a parachute after the crash. She said she was willing to change. Said she missed me. Said she loved me. And maybe, once, I would have broken down reading those words. Would have felt hope. But this version of me, the one who stopped chasing validation and started building his own worth, he didn't need promises. He needed peace. So I muted the thread, turned off notifications, went downstairs, had breakfast alone, and for the first time in years, I didn't check the time. Because there was no one left to hurry back to. No one waiting. No one controlling. Just me. And when a man learns that solitude can feel safer than a shared bed, you don't lure him back with tears. You just get used to the echo. I went back once. Not to reconcile. Not to explain. Just to finish. The house looked the same. Same curtains. Same pictures. Same furniture I once built with my hands. Now collecting dust in rooms that no longer held anything sacred. She wasn't home. I planned it that way. Checked her calendar. She had a lunch with a friend. Probably telling some version of the story where I just drifted. She never understood. Men don't drift. We disconnect in silence until one day we're gone. And by the time we leave, we've already grieved. I walked through the house room by room. Not nostalgic. Not bitter. Just focused. I collected the last few things I'd left behind. A leather watch. A folder of documents. A photo of my parents she never bothered to frame. In the bedroom, I opened the closet. Her side untouched. Mine mostly cleared. But on the top shelf was a box. It held old cards I'd written her, back when I thought love could be revived with effort. I didn't open them. I didn't need to. I placed the box in a bag. Not because I wanted the memories, but because I refused to let her keep the parts of me she stopped valuing. Before I left, I stood in the doorway one last time. I looked at the couch she used to curl up on. The kitchen table where I sat alone, too many nights. The hallway she used to walk past me like I didn't exist. And I felt nothing. No rage. No sadness. Just release. She came home an hour later. By then, I was already downtown, signing the last of the paperwork. Separate address. Separate accounts. New chapter. She texted, "You were here?" I didn't reply. That night, she called. It rang 4 times. Then silence. No voicemail. No message. Because the man she expected to pick up doesn't live in that version of her story anymore. You see, I didn't leave her to find someone better. I left because she made me invisible, then acted surprised when I disappeared. I didn't slam the door. Didn't scream. Didn't announce my exit. I just stopped participating in a love I never felt returned. She'll tell her friends I changed. Then I shut down. But the truth is simple. She kept saying no for so long. She forgot that silence cuts both ways. And when the silence became hers, when it echoed in empty rooms, in untouched dinners, and unanswered texts, that's when she finally understood. This wasn't abandonment. It was closure, executed with precision, and no invitation for return. Because when I left, I took the version of myself she never thought would walk away. And I didn't just disappear. I made sure she'd never find me again. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.